Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! My mom and dad loved entertaining, and this particular party they decided to throw was huge. Over 100 people were coming. It was a mix of close friends, work colleagues, and friends of friends. The house was buzzing with excitement when my parents prepared for the big night. I had been looking forward to this party for weeks. While I was too young to really participate in the adult conversations and activities, I found my own way to be involved. I decided I would be the official greeter at the front door. I thought it would be fun to welcome everyone when they arrived, and my parents thought it was sweet that I wanted to help out. When guests started arriving, I positioned myself right by the front entrance. I was dressed in my best clothes and felt very important in my new role. Each time someone new came to the door, I would stick out my hand for a proper handshake and greet them warmly. Most of the guests thought it was adorable and shook my hand gently, often commenting to my parents about what a polite young man I was. The party was in full swing with music playing loudly throughout the house. People were laughing, chatting, and having a great time. I was enjoying meeting all these different people and felt proud that I was contributing to making everyone feel welcome. Then this guy showed up. He was someone my parents barely knew, more of an acquaintance than a real friend. He was a big, muscular man who looked like he spent a lot of time at the gym. When he walked up to the door, I did what I had been doing all evening. I stuck out my hand with a friendly smile and welcomed him to the party. He looked down at me with this weird grin on his face. Instead of giving me a normal handshake, he grabbed my hand and started squeezing it really hard. At first, I thought maybe he just had a strong grip and didn't realize his own strength. I told him he was hurting my hand. But instead of letting go or loosening his grip, he just smiled wider and kept squeezing even harder. I could feel the bones in my hand being crushed together, and it was starting to really hurt. I told him again that he was hurting me and asked him to please stop. The guy actually chuckled at this and continued squeezing my hand even tighter. I realized this wasn't an accident or him not knowing his own strength. He was doing this on purpose because he thought it was funny to hurt a little kid. He was getting some kind of sick enjoyment out of showing his dominance over someone smaller and weaker than him. I had asked him twice to stop and he had completely ignored me both times. My parents had taught me that I should always try talking first, but if someone wouldn't listen to reasonable requests, then I needed to make them take me seriously. So I pulled my leg back and gave him the hardest kick I could right between his legs. The effect was immediate and dramatic. He let go of my hand instantly and doubled over, making this loud howling noise. He was clutching himself and groaning in pain, hopping around by the front door. The music was pretty loud, so most people at the party didn't hear what happened. But a few people near the entrance turned to look when they heard him yelling. My dad happened to be walking toward the front door right at that moment to greet some new arrivals. The guy saw my dad and immediately started complaining, still bent over and clearly in pain. He yelled that I had just kicked him in a very sensitive area and claimed I had attacked him for no reason. My dad looked at me with raised eyebrows, clearly wanting to hear my side of the story before making any judgments. I explained that the man had been squeezing my hand really hard, and it hurt. I told my dad that I had asked him to stop twice, but he wouldn't let go and kept hurting me on purpose. My dad nodded at me with a look of approval, then turned to stare at the guy with the coldest expression I had ever seen on his face. He didn't say a word, just gave him this look that made it clear exactly what he thought of adults who bullied children. The guy looked around, probably hoping someone would take his side or at least feel sorry for him. But the few people who had witnessed what happened or heard him complaining just stared at him with disgust. Nobody was going to defend a grown man who thought it was entertaining to hurt a 10-year-old kid. Realizing he had no support and that everyone thought he was a creep, he left the party pretty quickly after that. He mumbled something about needing to go and limped out the door, still walking funny from my kick. The party continued without him, and everyone had a great time. A couple of the guests who saw what happened even came up to me later to tell me I did the right thing standing up for myself. Over the next few months, I ran into this guy a few more times at other social gatherings since he moved in the same circles as my parents. But he was completely different toward me after that incident. He was always very polite and respectful, never trying any of his macho dominance games again. He would give me normal handshakes and even seemed a little nervous around me. I think getting kicked where it counts by a 10-year-old taught him a harsh lesson about picking on people smaller than himself. I've been working as a wedding videographer for almost 15 years now. I started right out of college when digital cameras were just getting good enough to make decent films without breaking the bank. Back then, I was doing everything: shooting, editing, even carrying equipment for photographers just to get my foot in the door. Those early years taught me everything about this business, especially how important it is to have everything in writing. Wedding clients can be intense. I get it, it's their big day, emotions are high, money's tight, and everyone has an opinion. But I learned the hard way that without a solid contract, you'll get walked all over. So now I'm pretty strict about it. Everything spelled out clearly: what you get, what you don't get, timeline, payment schedule, the works. About 6 months ago, this woman contacted me through my website. She seemed normal enough during our initial consultation. We met at a coffee shop downtown and she explained what she wanted: something simple and elegant for her wedding. She looked through my portfolio, asked the usual questions about my style and experience, and we talked numbers. I explained my packages to her. The basic one includes 6 hours of filming on the wedding day, a highlight reel that's about 3 to 4 minutes long, showing the best moments, and a short film that's usually around 15 minutes with the ceremony and key reception moments. That's it. No raw footage, no additional editing, no extra hours. She nodded along and said that sounded perfect for what she wanted. We signed the contract. Right there, she paid her deposit, and I put her wedding date on my calendar. The trouble started about 2 weeks before the wedding. She began texting me constantly with questions and demands that went way beyond what we'd agreed to. She asked if I could arrive 2 hours early to film her getting ready, if I could stay late for the after party, if I could film the rehearsal dinner the night before. Each time I politely told her what was included in her package and offered to upgrade her to a higher tier for additional coverage. But she'd always respond with something about how she thought I'd want to capture everything or how she assumed that was included. I kept referring back to our contract and stayed professional. The wedding day itself was a nightmare. From the moment I arrived, she treated me like I was her personal assistant rather than a professional videographer she'd hired. She immediately told me to move my camera because the lighting was terrible where I had it. I explained that my position gave me the best angle for the ceremony and that I'd been doing this for 15 years. She snapped back that she was paying me, so I should do what she said, and then demanded I make sure to get her aunt's good side because she was very picky about photos. I told her I'd do my best to capture everyone beautifully, but needed to focus on her and her partner as the main subjects. It went on like that all day. She kept trying to direct me, telling me where to stand, what to film, even how to hold my camera. Meanwhile, I'm trying to do my job and capture her wedding professionally. I bit my tongue and kept working because that's what professionals do. During the reception, things got worse. She kept pulling me aside every few minutes with new demands. She insisted I film her cousin's speech, her college roommate's toast, and make sure I got video of everyone dancing. I told her that I was already filming the key speeches and reception moments outlined in her package. She got frustrated and said she didn't want to miss anything important, that I should be filming everything. I explained that if she wanted extended coverage, we could discuss an upgrade, but right now I was providing exactly what was in her contract. She huffed and walked away, but she kept doing it throughout the night. By the time I packed up my gear, I was exhausted and frustrated. Still, I'd gotten beautiful footage of her wedding. The ceremony was gorgeous. The lighting was perfect during their first dance, and I'd captured all the emotional moments that make a wedding film special. I spent the next 3 weeks editing her video. The highlight reel came together beautifully. All the best moments set to music, perfectly timed cuts, color correction, the works. The longer film showed their entire ceremony and the key reception moments. It was some of my best work, honestly. I delivered everything on time, exactly promised in the contract. She even seemed happy when she first watched the videos. But then, 2 days later, my phone rang. She demanded all the raw footage from her wedding. I explained that raw footage wasn't included in her package and wasn't part of our agreement. She asked what I meant, saying that since I filmed her wedding, the footage belonged to her. I told her the finished videos belonged to her, which was what she paid for. I explained that raw footage consists of unedited files, hours of shaky shots, duplicate takes, test footage, and that no professional videographer hands over raw files unless specifically paid for that service. She said it was ridiculous and that she wanted every single second I filmed, because those were her memories. I explained that I understood she wanted to preserve her memories, which was exactly why I created beautiful edited films for her. I offered to provide raw footage for an extra fee. That's when she completely lost it. She screamed that I was trying to steal her memories, that I was holding her wedding hostage, and that this was extortion. I told her that she received exactly what she paid for according to our signed contract, and that I delivered high-quality edited films on time. She yelled that she didn't care about my stupid contract and that I ruined her wedding video by not giving her everything. Then she started crying on the phone, saying she couldn't relive her big day without every single second I'd film. She tried guilt-tripping me, saying I was heartless and that she'd trusted me with the most important day of her life. When the crying didn't work, she got aggressive again. She threatened to destroy my business if I didn't give her all the footage right away. She said she'd post everywhere that I was a scam artist who steals from brides. I told her I was sorry she felt that way, but that I provided exactly what we agreed upon, and then I ended the call. She called back immediately, but I let it go to voicemail. She called 6 more times that day, leaving increasingly angry messages. By the next morning, she'd made good on her threat. She posted on every wedding Facebook group in our area, tagged me and other vendors on Instagram, and left 1-star reviews on my Google business page and website. Her posts all said the same thing, that I'd ruined her wedding video and was holding her memories hostage. Reading her lies online was the worst part. She claimed I promised her raw footage, that I'd done a terrible job filming, that I'd been rude to her guests. None of it was true, but there it was for everyone to see. But here's the thing about working in the wedding industry for 15 years. Other professionals know exactly how these situations go. Within hours, other videographers and photographers were commenting on her posts, explaining how contracts work and that raw footage is never included in basic packages. Some even shared their own horror stories about entitled clients. A few of my past clients saw the posts and jumped in to defend me, sharing photos of their own beautiful wedding videos I created. The tide started turning pretty quickly. Then something beautiful happened. One of the other vendors she'd tagged, a wedding planner I'd worked with before, decided she'd had enough. She posted a detailed response explaining that she'd witnessed Karen's behavior at the wedding, how she'd treated me like hired help instead of a professional, and how she'd been demanding things outside her contract all day. Other vendors who'd worked the same wedding started chiming in. The photographer mentioned how Karen had tried to direct him too. The florist talked about how she'd changed her mind about arrangements 3 times during setup. Even the DJ said she'd been difficult about song choices all night. But the real kicker came when Karen's own wedding planner, not the one who defended me, but her main planner, posted a comment. She politely but clearly explained that she'd been present during my original consultation with Karen, and that the contract had been very clear about what was included. She mentioned that Karen had asked about raw footage during that meeting and had been told it wasn't included, but she'd decided the package was fine anyway. Within 2 days, Karen's posts were flooded with comments from industry professionals calling her out. Her reviews on my business pages were getting flagged and removed for being false. Some of her own wedding guests even started commenting that they'd seen the videos I created and thought they were beautiful. Karen tried to double down at first. She made more posts claiming everyone was lying and that the whole wedding industry was corrupt. But it just made her look worse. Eventually, she started deleting her posts one by one. The final blow came about a week later. Apparently, other vendors had started warning each other about her in their professional groups. When she tried to book services for her first anniversary party, she couldn't find anyone willing to work with her. Her reputation was completely shot. I never got an apology, but I didn't need one. My business actually grew from all the exposure. Last Wednesday was supposed to be just another routine day. I had a meeting with a potential client at a coffee shop downtown at 2 p.m. I've been circling the block for about 15 minutes when I spotted it. A perfect parking spot right in front of the coffee shop. It was like finding a unicorn. I put on my turn signal and started backing into the spot when suddenly this woman appeared out of nowhere and literally stood in the middle of the parking space. I rolled down my window and told her I was trying to park there. She apologized sarcastically and said her friend saw the spot first and was coming around the block. I looked around confused because there was no other car in sight. I told her I didn't see anyone and that I'd been waiting there with my signal on. She insisted that her friend had called dibs and I'd have to find somewhere else. This was ridiculous. I'd never heard of anyone saving a public parking spot by standing in it. The woman looked to be in her 30s, wearing expensive workout clothes and had that attitude that screamed trouble. I explained that wasn't how parking worked, since this was a public street. She just told me to move along because her friend would be there any second. At this point, other cars were starting to line up behind me, and people were honking. I made a decision. I slowly continued backing into the spot. The woman started shrieking like I was trying to run her over, even though I was barely moving and she had plenty of time to get out of the way. She yelled that I couldn't do this and that it was assault, threatening to call the police. She finally moved but kept screaming at me as I parked. I grabbed my portfolio and headed toward the coffee shop, hoping that would be the end of it. Through the window, I could see her pacing back and forth on the sidewalk, talking animatedly on her phone. My meeting went well, lasting about an hour. When I came back outside, I saw something unbelievable. My car was completely covered in bright blue paint. It was dripping down the windows, pooled on the hood, and splattered all over the sides. It looked like someone had dumped an entire bucket over it. I stood there in shock for a moment, then noticed the city workers across the street painting some railings. They were staring at my car too, looking just as confused as I was. One of the workers came over and asked if that was my car. When I said yes, he told me some crazy lady had grabbed their paint bucket and went to town on my car about 20 minutes ago. I asked if he was serious, and he said he was dead serious. He explained that they tried to stop her, but she was like a woman possessed, screaming about how I had stolen her parking spot. I looked around frantically and spotted the same woman from earlier getting into a red sedan about half a block down. I quickly pulled out my phone and managed to get a clear photo of her license plate just as she drove away. The police arrived within 10 minutes of my call. The officer was sympathetic but explained that without witnesses or evidence, it would be hard to prove anything. That's when the city worker spoke up and told the officer that there was actually a security camera on the building across the street that had a perfect view of the whole street. The officer's demeanor changed immediately. He made some calls, and within an hour, they had pulled the footage. It showed everything. Karen grabbing the paint bucket from the workers, walking over to my car, and methodically pouring paint all over it while looking around to make sure no one was stopping her. The officer told me they had her license plate from my photo and clear footage of the vandalism. He explained this was destruction of property, and given the value of the damage, it was likely a felony charge. My car was a 2019 sedan that I'd just finished paying off 6 months earlier. The damage estimate came back at over $8,000. The paint had gotten into every crevice, and several panels would need to be completely replaced. Later that evening, the officer called me with an update and said they had arrested her at her house about an hour earlier. He told me she had 2 prior convictions for similar incidents, one for keying someone's car and another for throwing a drink at someone's windshield. This third strike was going to put her away for a while. When they showed up at her door with the warrant, Karen initially denied everything. But when they told her about the security footage, she broke down and confessed. She even admitted that there never was a friend coming to take the parking spot. She had just wanted it for herself and thought standing in it would work. The officer also mentioned that when they searched her car, they found several items that didn't belong to her, suggesting this wasn't her first theft either. The paint bucket she'd stolen was worth $150, adding theft charges to her vandalism charges. 3 months later, I got a call from the prosecutor's office. They told me Karen had been sentenced to 18 months in jail and ordered to pay full restitution for my car repairs, plus additional fines. Her lawyer had tried to argue that it was a momentary lapse in judgment, but with her history and the premeditated nature of the crime, the judge wasn't having it. I'm 21 and just lost the most important person in my life. My dad raised me and my twin brothers, who are 19. We don't have much family left, mostly distant relatives and family friends who've become more like real family to us over the years. That's why we try to cherish the few blood relatives we do have. One of those relatives is my cousin. She's 24 and lived with us for most of her childhood and teenage years. Her mom was a single parent who went through some really tough times, in and out of difficult situations that made it hard for her to provide a stable home. My dad stepped up and basically became a second father to my cousin. He didn't raise her entirely, but he played a huge role in her life. They were really close because of it. When my cousin turned 21, she moved out of state. Since then, she's barely visited or kept in touch. We understood people grow up and move on with their lives, but it still hurt a little, especially for my dad, though he never said anything about it. When my dad passed away, my cousin volunteered to make slideshow presentations for the funeral service. She said she wanted to contribute something meaningful since she couldn't be there to help with other arrangements. She planned to make two, one to play right before the eulogy and another for right after. We thought it was a sweet gesture and really appreciated that she wanted to honor my dad that way. Everything seemed fine until the morning of the funeral. That's when she suddenly mentioned she had to pick up her mom from the airport and might be running late. This was the first time she'd brought up any scheduling conflicts, but okay, whatever. We figured she might miss some of the viewing time before the service, but she'd be there for the actual funeral. The viewing started and people began arriving to pay their respects. My brothers and I were greeting everyone, accepting condolences, and trying to hold ourselves together. That's when my cousin started calling. She told me they were running behind and that she and her mom needed to grab something to eat first. She said they were going to be about 60 to 90 minutes late. Then she asked if I could request the funeral home to push everything back and delay the service a little bit. I looked around at all the people who had already arrived, some of whom had traveled from other states. The funeral director was coordinating with the pastor, the flowers were arranged, the programs were printed with specific times. I explained to her that everything was already in motion and there were people here who made arrangements based on the scheduled time. She insisted I should just ask them, saying it should be quick and easy. I told her I could maybe see if we could change the order of some things, but I doubted we could delay the whole service. I was dealing with greeting mourners, coordinating with my brothers, and handling last-minute details. I tried to find a moment to speak with the funeral director, but honestly, there was too much happening and I got pulled in different directions. The service proceeded as originally planned. My cousin kept texting me during this time asking for updates. I was emotionally drained and focused on getting through one of the hardest days of my life, so I stopped responding to her messages. She took my silence to mean that we had successfully rearranged everything for her. She and her mom finally showed up near the very end of the service. They missed the viewing, the eulogy, both slideshow presentations, and most of the ceremony. After everything was over and people were starting to leave, my cousin approached me. She asked where her slideshows were and said she didn't see them play. I told her they played during the service and that she missed them because she arrived late. She seemed shocked and said she thought I had moved things around. I explained that I had told her I'd try to see if we could change the order, but I couldn't make it happen because there was too much going on. She started yelling at me, calling me selfish. She said all I had to do was talk to the funeral home and that it would have been quick and easy. Here I was, having just buried my father, and she was calling me selfish for not rearranging an entire funeral service around her schedule. I tried to apologize and said I was sorry it didn't work out the way she wanted, but there were a lot of people here who had made plans. She cut me off and said this was unbelievable. She complained that she and her mom felt completely robbed and that they came all this way and missed everything because I couldn't make one simple request. I pointed out that her slideshows were on her computer and she could watch them anytime she wanted. She said that wasn't the point and that they were supposed to be part of the service. She accused me of being an a-hole and said now no one got to see them because of me. She stormed off with her mom. The next day, while I was still processing the loss of my father and trying to figure out how to move forward, I started getting messages from family friends. My cousin had gone on social media and posted a long rant about how her a-hole family had denied her the chance to properly honor her father figure. She painted herself as a victim, claiming we deliberately excluded her tributes and didn't care about her feelings. The post made it sound like we had maliciously prevented her from participating in the funeral. She didn't mention that she showed up 90 minutes late or that she'd sprung the scheduling conflict on us at the last minute. She just focused on how hurt and betrayed she felt. I made the mistake of texting her privately to try to smooth things over. I told her I really wished things could have worked out differently and that I knew she wanted to be part of the service. She told me to save it and called me a selfish a-hole again. She said I had proved it the day before and that I had one job but couldn't even do that. I tried explaining that I was dealing with a lot that day and that it wasn't as simple as she was making it sound. She brushed me off and said whatever helped me sleep at night. Then she told me that I had ruined her and her mom's chance to say goodbye properly. That's when I realized something. This wasn't really about the slideshows or the timing or even about honoring my dad. This was about my cousin making herself the center of attention during our family's time of grief. I decided to respond to her social media post publicly, since she'd chosen to air our business that way. I wrote a response explaining what really happened. I mentioned that she had volunteered to make slideshows for Dad's funeral, which we appreciated. But I also explained that she told us the morning of the service that she would be 60 to 90 minutes late due to picking up her mom and needing to eat first. I clarified that the service couldn't be delayed for the many people who had already arrived and made arrangements based on the scheduled time. I noted that the slideshows played as planned during the service, and that while we understood her disappointment at missing them, her description of events on social media didn't reflect what actually happened. Several family friends who had attended the funeral started commenting with support, confirming they had seen the slideshows played during the service. A few even mentioned how beautiful they were and how much they added to the ceremony. My cousin quickly deleted her original post, but the damage to her credibility was already done. She sent me one final nasty message calling me petty for embarrassing her online, but I didn't respond. This happened about 8 years ago when I was pregnant with my fourth child. My husband was working double shifts at the factory to save up for the new baby, which meant I was handling grocery runs solo with my 3 little ones in tow. My youngest was just 1 year old and still needed constant supervision. My second child had just turned 2 and was in that phase where everything was either mine or no. My oldest was almost 4 and had recently discovered that being helpful earned extra bedtime stories. The pregnancy was hitting me hard. I was about 7 months along and felt like I was carrying a bowling ball everywhere I went. Money was tight, so I had gotten into the habit of making detailed shopping lists and enlisting my oldest to help grab items from the lower shelves while I pushed the cart. It was our little system, and it usually worked pretty well. The 2 youngest would sit in the cart seat while my oldest would race ahead to find the items I called out. That Tuesday afternoon, I was feeling especially worn out. The baby had been kicking my ribs all morning, my back was aching, and I still had to pick up ingredients for dinner, plus stock up on diapers before the sale ended. I had dressed in my usual pregnancy uniform, an oversized sweater, leggings, and sneakers. Nothing fancy, just comfortable clothes that fit over my growing belly. The store was busier than usual. I was navigating the produce section trying to keep my 2 youngest entertained while my oldest grabbed apples from the lower bins. My 1-year-old kept trying to grab everything within reach, and my 2-year-old was getting cranky because it was close to nap time. An older woman approached me. She looked to be in her 60s, well dressed with perfectly styled gray hair and a stern expression. She walked right up to my cart without any greeting. The woman demanded to know where the deli section was. Her tone was sharp and impatient, like she expected an immediate answer. I was juggling my squirmy 1-year-old who was trying to grab a banana display, so I looked up quickly and gestured toward the back of the store. I told her I thought it was over in that general direction. My pregnancy brain was definitely kicking in. I knew the deli was somewhere in that general direction, but I couldn't remember exactly where. I was more focused on keeping my kids contained and getting through my shopping list. The woman's face hardened. Her voice got even louder and sharper. She yelled at me, telling me to do my job and take her there. She kept repeating that I needed to do my job. I just stared at her in complete shock. My mouth probably hung open. I couldn't process what was happening. Here I was, obviously pregnant, with 3 small children, wearing regular clothes, and she thought I worked at the store. Before I could even respond, she reached out and grabbed my arm, trying to physically drag me away from my cart. She was a small woman, maybe 5 feet tall, and I was huge with pregnancy, so she wasn't having much success. But the fact that she was trying to pull me away from my children while they sat in the cart made my protective instincts kick in. I finally managed to speak up and told her I wasn't sure why she thought I worked there. My voice came out calmer than I felt. Inside, I was a mix of confused, angry, and honestly a little scared. Who grabs a pregnant woman with children like that? The woman was glaring at me with this look of pure rage, like I had personally ruined her day. She opened her mouth, clearly ready to unleash another verbal attack. My 2 youngest had started crying, the 1-year-old because of all the yelling, and the 2-year-old because the 1-year-old was crying. My almost 4-year-old, who had been watching this whole scene unfold while clutching a bag of apples, decided to speak up. She asked me why the lady was yelling at me. Then she looked directly at the woman and asked if she was lost. The simple, innocent questions from my child seemed to snap the woman out of whatever delusional state she was in. She actually shook her head like she was clearing it, then looked at me more carefully. I watched her eyes move from my face to my obviously pregnant belly, then to my 3 children, then back to me in my regular clothes. The realization hit her. Her face went from angry red to pale white in about 2 seconds, without saying a single word. No apology, no explanation, nothing. She turned around and stormed off toward the back of the store. I stood there for a moment, still processing what had just happened. My oldest came over and hugged my leg. She asked if we had helped that lady. I told her that she had definitely helped. The whole interaction left me feeling shaky but also oddly disappointed. Part of me had been hoping she would escalate things further and demand to speak to my manager. I had already planned my response. I would have looked down at my almost 4-year-old and said something about how my manager right there says you need to use your inside voice in the store. My oldest had always been bossy, even as a toddler. She was the type of kid who would organize her younger siblings' toys and tell them where they were allowed to play. If anyone was going to lay down the law to an entitled stranger, it would have been her. When I continued shopping, I kept replaying the incident in my head. The audacity of someone assuming I worked there just because I was in the store, then getting angry when I didn't drop everything to help them, was beyond my understanding. But what really bothered me was the physical grabbing. I was pregnant with small children, even if I had worked there. You don't grab people like that. I finished my shopping without any other incidents, but I found myself looking over my shoulder, half expecting the woman to reappear with an actual store employee in tow, ready to complain about my poor customer service. When I told my husband about it later that evening, he was furious that someone had grabbed me. He wanted to know if I had gotten her license plate or reported her to store management. But honestly, I was just glad my kids and I were okay, and that my almost 4-year-old had unknowingly saved the day with her innocent questions. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.